The next character banners have been announced, and this comes after the end of the Yoimiya banner, and they are as follows: Alhaitham, Kazuha, Yao, Heizo, and Zhangling. So I'm going to give you my rough opinions on all of these characters, and then I'm also going to go over the weapon banner because I think a lot of individuals may be considering it this time around because both weapons are, to a degree at least, relatively speaking, viable. Kazuha is the individual a lot of people will be waiting on. I personally use Freedom Sworn on him, but I do have, other weapons and alternatives that I do swap around with. Kazuha is, and I think to this day, remains one of the most, I think, overvalued units for a lot of people's accounts. Don't get me wrong. I have 1012 EM, he is C0. His talents don't need to be upgraded because, for the most part, you're using him for his buffing, not for his damage. And he's on a VV set. With all that being said, I don't think that unless you're using a character like, hypothetically, a Raiden, or you're going for a mono elemental team, he's going to be the best pickup. This isn't saying he's a bad character. I don't want anyone to misconstrue this as me saying he's bad. I want you to understand that Kazuha is a character who works really well, but if you're looking for crowd control, Venti. If you're looking for buffing capabilities, yes, that's his main role for your team. The problem is, if you're running any of the Dendro-centric teams, if you're running a lot of other elemental teams, there are situations in which Kazuha is not the best pick. If you have C0 Raiden, you are most likely going to use Raiden National. Yes, you can go a team like Raiden with Kazuha, maybe you run in a Bennett and a Yaimiko to make sort of electric hypercarry based team, and that does work, but he's not the be-all end-all that I think a lot of people hype him up to be. His weapon is really good, and he as a character is great, but he shines best with other individuals who want to do the vast majority of their team's damage. He can't buff up anemo characters. If you're utilizing somebody who has a short DPS window and does a lot of damage, that's good. Yoimiya, for instance, has a short DPS window, but she's not dealing hypercarry amount of damage because she most of the time wants to capitalize on stuff like Vaporize or any other reaction. Ganyu works with him because you can infuse Pyro and do Melt Ganyu. And she also works in a freeze composition. The problem is, though, a lot of individuals will get more value if you're running Melt with Nahida Bennett, because you have Burning and you have the Elemental Mastery buff of Nahida. If you're running Freeze, well, then yeah, his value's there, but you could use Venti to group up the enemies, and then Kokomi and anyone, Rosaria, Layla, whatever. I think he's a great character. I just think that if you're looking at him and saying, oh, I can slot him onto any team, you can. He might not be the best pick, but you can. If you don't have the survivability, yes, there are other characters. If you want more damage and don't have a hyper carry, he's not your hyper carry. He's meant to buff a hyper carry, but a lot of individuals won't have that. Sino, for instance, it can work, but you do better off with Quick Bloom or Aggravate. And if we're looking at the roster of characters we have, he is excluded entirely from any Dendro unit. He's not going to buff any Anemo unit. So you're looking at any other element. With a lot of the Electro units, Aggravate and something like Hyper Bloom work really well for them, including Yaimiko. If you're looking at Cryo, Shenhe is the dedicated Cryo buffer. Physical doesn't get any benefit from him. So he's excluding 3 separate elements. If you're looking at Geo, that's also gone too. Now let's Horror. He buffs Pyro, he buffs Cryo, he can buff Electro and Hydro, but for the vast majority of people, I don't believe he's going to be the jump up to your account. He can be a 20% damage increase, but if you don't have anyone who does enough damage to make that 20% actually matter, then he's a character who has potential, but doesn't necessarily reach that full potential until you have characters that can help him do that. If you want to run a mono elemental team like Yelan with Ayato and, I don't know, Kokomi and him, that works out great. But if you don't have anyone who can make use of him, he's not the pickup you need. Alhaitham, as you can see, I don't have him. I can't speak on this character, but realistically, he's Denjo. You can throw him in with Yaimiko, with Fischl, with any Electro character. You can throw him in with somebody like Yelan and then an Electro character for Hype Bloom. He will be great. I think at the end of the day, we don't have a bad Denjo character. We have okay ones, but a lot of them are just really good. Kale, her main advantage, she's really cute. We don't have any bad Dendro characters. So if this is a unit who interests you, I understand that he's good in a specific role as an on-field damage dealer for Dendro DPS, but you do need to watch his timings. He's a lot like Child in that regard. He does have a specific way he needs to be played, and if you incorrectly play him, his damage will be much lower than what it should be. If you don't get the maximum stacks on the skill, if you don't get the maximum stacks for him in general, yes, people compare him a lot to Keqing, but the infusion is really where the comparison ends alongside teleportation, I guess. Outside of that, he requires so many particular things to get the max stacks out of him, to get the max damage out of him, that he's a complicated character to play. He's not just a plug and play unit to like Hu Tao or like Raiden or pretty much the rest of the roster. I don't think I need to go over Zhangling. You know her, she's good, she's strong, pull her, because if you don't have C4, then it's a pickup and it's a bonus. If you have C4, you can kind of ignore it, I'm gonna be honest. Yao Yao, she's next on this list. I use her quite often. She's actually used in my Nilo team. But, and this is a big but, unless you're using a Nilo team, I don't think she's probably going to be the best for you, because there are other healers out there. There are other healers. If you have a Chi-Chi, she's a good healer. If you have a Barbara, she's Hydro, and you can use Hydro-related reactions. If you have a Mika, he's a healer. You have so many other healer options that summoning for this healer in particular doesn't make sense unless you use her a lot in your teams. And if you do, you're going to pull regardless. Azo, this man is C6 for me, so I have no reason to pull for him. If you're looking at his constellations, I think all of them are pretty good in general. C6 obviously is wonderful because it does help you a lot with building him out, at least for his one specific ability. But for the rest of him as a unit, I do think he's actually pretty decent. I firmly believe that if you want to build him, he can be really good, and that as a Nemo character, you can slap in VV on him like any other Nemo-based character, and he can shine. But if you're looking at him and comparing him to anyone else, yeah, he's not going to be your 5-star damage dealer equivalent to Xiao. Because Xiao's a 5-star. He's not going to be Wanderer levels, even though I don't like Wanderer and don't build him. He's going to be fun. He has a unique playstyle. In fact, in my opinion, his playstyle is better and his animations are better than Scaramouche. But if you don't like him, you don't like him. That's just the end of the story there. For the weapon banner, Freedom Sworn, really good. Great on Kazuha, great on Kukishinobu, great on any character who can actually proc with elemental reactions, because the 10% damage bonus is neat. I don't think it's amazing, because a lot of the characters you're using this on don't really care about the damage bonus. Instead, what you're looking for is the plunging attack / normal attack damage bonus up here, and then the attack increase. This is great for a Ganyu, because she uses charge attack. This is great for your Yoimiya. This is great for a Xiao, if he can actually get the benefit from this. At the end of the day, any character who uses normal attacks is good. If you're looking for other units though, Raiden doesn't technically count, because her attacks in her burst aren't necessarily counted as normal attacks, as you saw with somebody like Beto. So you do have a situation in which a character may seem good, and the weapon may seem good, but the weapon doesn't benefit you in particular. So understand that 20% attack bonus is the main thing you're using, and if you're wanting that, get Throwing Arrows. Get, I don't know, a Bennett. Get literally anything else, because the weapon itself, it's nice for the EM. That's what I'd say. Alhaitham's sword is essentially the reverse of Sino's weapon. Alhaitham's sword gives 88% crit damage. It's pretty good. I'm using Sino's weapon here just as a placeholder, because I don't have Alhaitham or his weapon, because I didn't pull. But I don't think it's worth your pulls. I think if you like him in particular, yes, it's good for him. If you don't though, it's a stat stick at best. If you like me moving this over to any other character, they benefit from the crit rate, they don't benefit from the rest of this, especially if I move it to like Zhongli. So understand, Alhaitham's weapon requires him to essentially be the one using it, because he's the only one who's going to be able to get the maximum effect out of it. Other weapons, Morin's Moon is actually decent on your Yolan. That's it, because Yolan's really the only person I can think of at the moment who'd actually use her elemental burst a lot, but it doesn't benefit her skill and her energy recharge is low. But if you want it, you can use it at R5 and keep it at level 1, because she doesn't benefit from the attack. Fav is Fav. If you have Fav, you know how good it is. If you don't have Fav, you can pull it, but Fav is on standard banner. You really shouldn't be pulling in particular for Favonius weapons, because they're arguably pretty common. Weightbreaker's Fin is an individual weapon that at R5 is actually close in comparison to Engulfing Lightning, and it's above the weapons here like Scarlet Sands or Jade Spear, but the problem is it doesn't have any crit, so you'll be building a bunch of attack on her, which, hey, if you like that, more power to you. Just understand that it is a bit of an iffy weapon unless it's at R5. Fav Codex. I don't think of anyone outside of like Mona or maybe Nahida or Sucrose who would actually want to use it, but it's Favonius. If Favonius is Favonius, it's Favonius. You know how good it is, you know how bad it is. You know if you want it or if you don't. Sacrificial Greatswords on this banner, I don't think any character, any individual here is really going to use it, because you either have it R5 and don't use it, or you don't have it and don't really need it. I think it's good for Dori. I think it can be good on somebody like Xiangyun. But outside of that, I don't think the vast majority of characters you have will want to use it. Sayu wants high base attack and just attack % in general. D-Luke wants the same. Crit rate for any character, any DPS oriented character If looking at Noelle, the same thing, she went to defense. So it's really only flexible on somebody like Chongyun or Dory. That's it. And realistically, at that point, if you're doing Burst Dory because you want her healing, you would want Favonius instead. That's my banner reviews. That's my thoughts and opinions. Give me yours down below. Are you summoning for either of these characters, or are you kind of skipping? Did you kind of fall out of Genshin once Honkai Star Rail came out? Or maybe you're taking a break. And if you are, I hope you enjoy it. Either way, hope to see you next time, and goodbye.